I'm Dan Bray. I'm the specialist in Asian ceramics and works of art at Gorringes. And I've been working here for 7 years. My experience goes back 22 years of researching and cataloguing Asian ceramics and works of art, as well as European ceramics. The market still continues to be dominated by Chinese porcelain and works of art. I think this market will hold up probably for decades to come, because the number of Chinese who can afford to buy these items back continues to grow as the middle class in China increases. With the Japanese items, again, it is the items of high quality, particularly sword fittings and metalware, which seem to be going back to collectors in Japan. The area of the market where we have seen a real downturn, though, in the last 10 to 15 years has been for a lot of European ceramics, particularly British porcelain dating from the 18th and 19th century. A good example of this is the Worcester blue and white wares, which date from the Dr. Wall period from about 1760 to 1790. Which, going back to the 1970s, were very popular with collectors, and a piece that was worth £300 in the 1980s could be picked up for as little as £50 in the current market. So I believe this is an area where collectors should consider, because there are items, patterns and items of good quality to be collected, and I think this market may come back in decades to come. High quality pieces of Chinese porcelain, which we describe as being mark and period. This is a good example here, this pair of altar vessels and covers. Here we have the mark of Dao Guang, which dates from 1821 to 1850. These altar vessels and covers are rather special, though, because they were for imperial use by the emperor at one of the altars in the Forbidden City in Beijing. And must have been bought back in the late 19th century by a collector from the family. This pair were made in the Daoguang period, 1821 to 50, and they have a very interesting provenance. They belong to the late Lady Harcourt, who was the lady-in-waiting to the late Queen Mother. And provenance such as this is very desirable to buyers of Chinese items. As well as porcelain, the buyers are really looking for anything of good quality, age and provenance, including jade, bronzes, paintings, etc., as well as Chinese. The Japanese market, although many items have come down in value, certain areas are still performing very well, such as good quality metalware, kozone enamel. Example here is this incense burner and cover by Namikawa Yasuyuki, dates from about 1910, and even with slight damage to it, it may well sell for around £4,000 or £5,000. I would recommend to collectors not necessarily to look at the obvious things, which is 20th century ceramics and Asian items, but maybe to look at the items that are a bit out of fashion at the moment, such as the traditional ceramics market for 18th century Worcester and other English porcelain, which is at least a quarter or a fifth of the price at the height of the market from the 1980s. The most memorable thing that I've sold in my time at Gorringes was in 2017. I was called out to do a valuation for inheritance tax purposes of a collection of Chinese bronzes. Little did I know it was one of the best collections of Chinese archaic bronzes to come on the market for the last 10 years. Most of the bronzes were collected by a chap called Jean-Claude Lepelleur, who was an enthusiast and a regular at auctions in London. The pieces were dating from 2000 to 3,200 years old, and many of them were archaic bronzes made for rituals such as drinking and eating, in the early Chinese period. Now these things are very rare, particularly if they're in good condition, and we had a number of items sell in excess of £20,000, the highlight of which was a ding, which is a tripod vessel standing on 3 tall feet, which in profile looked like birds. And this was a very rare shape and sold for a hammer price of £190,000. And the collection as a whole made over £500,000 for just 85 lots.